We begin tonight, keeping them honest, with the name that was not spoken in last night's State of the Union message, Jeffrey Epstein. That and the name that we learned today has turned up in FBI records missing from the Epstein files, Donald Trump. We know this because a numbered evidence log in the Ghislaine Maxwell case catalogs about 325 FBI witness interviews. But of that number, more than 90 do not appear to be present on the Justice Department's website. And 3 of those witness interviews are related to a woman who told agents that Jeffrey Epstein had repeatedly abused her, starting when she was approximately 13 years old. She also accused Trump of sexually assaulting her. Now, we should point out here, the president has consistently denied any wrongdoing in connection with Jeffrey Epstein, and the White House is calling the allegations, quote, false and sensationalist.
The documents related to her testimony with the FBI are not there. It's our question to the FBI and the DOJ is, why aren't the documents there? Why have they been removed? And Congress, under the Transparency Act and the subpoena, have a right to see them.
So that's the House Oversight Committee's ranking Democrat today. The president, as you know, has been treating the files as the ultimate not guilty verdict.
I have nothing to hide. I've been exonerated. I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I've been totally exonerated. And I've been totally exonerated. I've been totally exonerated on Epstein. Well, you know, I'm the expert in a way because I've been totally exonerated. But I'm the one that can talk about it because I've been totally exonerated.
Well, keeping them honest, that might be easier to say if the public had access to everything the federal government has on Epstein, Maxwell, and the many powerful people they moved among. Then citizen Trump included, who again says he did nothing wrong. These latest allegations first arose in July of 2019, just days after Epstein's arrest on federal charges. A woman called an FBI tip line. Agents interviewed her 2 weeks later, during which she told them Epstein had repeatedly abused her at a home he was staying at in South Carolina. The abuse started, she said, when she was about 13 years old. Now, according to the FBI interview record, a form known as a 302, when she showed agents a photo of Trump and Epstein that a friend had sent her, her attorney said that she was, quote, concerned about implicating additional individuals and specifically any that were well known due to a fear of retaliation. The Maxwell evidence log notes 3 additional 302 forms dated in August and October 2019 related to the same alleged victim, as well as 3 other sets of interview notes. Now, none of those appear to be present in the files released by the DOJ. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have now said the release files, which took an act of Congress to get released, are not all there is. And it's been more than a year since the Attorney General said this on Fox News.
Tomorrow, Jesse, breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office. It's sitting on my desk right now to review. A truckload of evidence arrived. It's now in the possession of the FBI. It's a new day. It's a new administration, and everything's going to come out to the public.
A few days later, a bunch of right-wing influencers emerged from the White House. Binders labeled the Epstein files Phase 1. They soon found out there was nothing much new in them. That was February. By July, the Justice Department was trying to slam the door on it all, saying, quote, while we've labored to provide the public with maximum information regarding Epstein and ensured examination of any evidence in the government's possession, it is the determination of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. A bipartisan slate of lawmakers, including some of the president's otherwise die-hard supporters, were not buying that and set about forcing through legislation mandating full disclosure, of course, over the president's resistance.
We have nothing to do with Epstein. The Democrats do. I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax.
If there's nothing incriminating in the files, Venezuela, why are you acting as a...
Well, he finally did sign the bill, but when the deadline came, only a portion of the files came with it.
And so what we're doing is we are looking at every single piece of paper that we are going to produce, making sure that every victim, their name, their identity, their story, to the extent it needs to be protected, is completely protected. And so I expect that we're going to release more documents over the next couple of weeks.
Well, that part about protecting the victims with redactions, that did not happen for some. And though more documents would come out and expose, for example, that Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick had lied, saying he'd cut ties with Epstein in 2005, they would bring embarrassing revelations about former Harvard President and Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, who announced his retirement from Harvard today, and lead to the criminal investigations of a British lord and a disgraced former prince. That said, for the most part, the files we've seen have been notable for the absence of names hidden behind redactions, which both Republican Thomas Massie and Democrat Ro Khanna both say conceal potential co-conspirators. And to the files we've seen, you can now add the ones that are missing. Reading now from the Justice Department statement of them, several individuals and news outlets have recently flagged files related to documents produced to Ghislaine Maxwell in discovery of her criminal case that they claim appear to be missing. As with all documents that have been flagged by the public, the department is currently reviewing files within that category of the production. Should any document be found to have been improperly tagged in the review process and is responsive to the act, the department will, of course, publish it consistent with the law.
Newly released Justice Department documents show that as regulators investigated unauthorized construction on one of Epstein's 2 private islands, issuing stop work orders and weighing potential fines, Epstein appealed directly to the island's governor for help. Text messages uncovered by K-Files show Governor Albert Bryan Jr. telling Epstein he had asked one of the regulators to, quote, hold everything until speaking with him, and later sought the recusal of the commissioner overseeing the dispute. K-Files' Andrew Kaczynski joins me now. And, you know, Andrew, this is so important as we get to the heart of Jeffrey Epstein and how he had the power and money that he had and how he wielded it and this entire circle. So this gets to the influence and how he wielded it. What do these messages reveal?
Yeah, and you hit it right there. These messages, they offer a rare window into how Epstein operated in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where he leveraged his wealth, business footprint, and promises of investment to try to influence local officials. Now, I want to give people a little background here. Epstein had deep roots in the Virgin Islands. He bought his private island, Little St. James, in the 1990s. He later expanded. You can see them both there. He later expanded his footprint in 2016 and purchased neighboring Great St. James. And the permits show that he had plans to build docks, roads, residencies, and other development. And this is where these texts with the governor come into play. Now, by December 2018, regulators were scrutinizing construction on Great St. James. The Virginian Islands Department of Planning and Natural Resources had issued a stop work order and began reviewing potential violations. Epstein then reaches out directly to then the newly elected governor, Democrat Albert Bryan Jr. Look at this exchange between the two. Epstein complained about potential fines, and Bryan said he spoke to John Pierre Orell, that is the commissioner of the department, who they're calling JP in these texts, and he asked him, Bryan said he had asked him to, quote, hold everything until he and the attorney spoke to me. Later, Epstein complains that the same commissioner, JP, was, quote, going after me in the press, to which Bryan responded that he had asked the commissioner to recuse himself. And then in another subsequent message, Bryan wrote, I asked him to recuse himself and concede on all previous permit requests. Now, the documents don't show whether any enforcement decisions were ultimately changed, but what they do show is this. There was an active regulatory dispute. Epstein was communicating directly with the governor of the territory, and the governor was telling him that he was intervening on his behalf. Later, when Bryan was asked under oath in a 2023 deposition whether he had received, Epstein received any special favors or treatment from him, he answered repeatedly and simply no.
All right, Andrew, obviously your reporting is very illuminating on that front, and also shows this is not just a few text messages, okay? So when, again, we get to power and how he was wielding it.
3 months worth of text messages.
3 months worth.
January, and they end in June, and obviously Epstein is then arrested in July.
Okay, and as we point out, this all went down, this whole back and forth, 11 years after he was,
and after the
convicted.
Miami Herald's investigative series, which was in the November of 2018.
Right, so all of this then is known. There were meetings, there were attempts to meet as well that you've unveiled here. What do the records show?
Well, Aaron, that's right. The messages suggest this was not their first contact. Emails from September 2018, while Bryan was campaigning for governor, show aides coordinating a meeting between Bryan and Epstein at Epstein's financial firm in the Virgin Islands. In April 2019, as this dispute was unfolding, Epstein texted Bryan right there. He says, can you spare 15 minutes? To which Bryan replied, for you, absolutely. Epstein and Bryan then coordinated the meeting. It would appear to be the office of Epstein's longtime Virgin Islands tax attorney. There are also emails referencing additional meetings and phone calls, including, again, outreach through his longtime Virgin Islands attorney. So the documents show an ongoing line of communication, both during Bryan's campaign and later as Epstein was dealing with the regulators. Now, we reached out to Bryan and his spokespeople many, many times over the past 5 days, and we did not hear back from any of them.
I have just finished testifying. I answered every one of their questions as fully as I could, based on what I knew, and what I knew is what I said in my statement this morning. I never met Jeffrey Epstein, never had any connection or communication with him. I knew Ghislaine Maxwell casually as an acquaintance. But whatever they asked me, I did my very best to respond.
This is all part of the Oversight Committee's probe into dead pedophile Jeffrey Epstein and his child rape trafficking ring. Hillary Clinton, who has said she cannot recall even meeting Jeffrey Epstein, was asked about whether she had contact with Epstein's estate. And apparently she was also asked about Pizzagate. CNN's Annie Grayer is in Chappaqua, New York, where the hearing took place. Annie?
Well, Jake, the hearing has wrapped after over 6 hours of questioning that Secretary Hillary Clinton faced by both Democrats and Republicans. And she just addressed the press where she said that that was a very repetitive deposition. She said she didn't know how many times she could repeat the fact that she had never met Jeffrey Epstein. She categorized this all as sort of a waste of time. She talked about how she only knew Epstein's co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell casually, said that Maxwell attended her daughter Chelsea's wedding as a +1, didn't really interact with her. She said that she was confident that her husband had no knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. She said, quote, "I am." And she said that her husband's relationship with Epstein ended several years before anything about Epstein's criminal activities came to light. Now, Comer, House Oversight Chair James Comer, the top Republican on the committee, said that he is trying to get the deposition's video and transcript out as quickly as possible. We know that both Democrats and Republicans had a lot of questions here, but Democrats argued that this was largely a waste of time given that Hillary Clinton never knew Jeffrey Epstein directly. Take a listen to more of what Hillary Clinton had to say today.
That the best exchange that I had came at the very end when, contrary to every other deposition they have taken, no Republican member asked any questions about Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell to anyone else they have deposed. And in fact, the Republican members didn't even show up for the deposition of Les Wexner.
Hillary Clinton did not mince words in her deposition to Democrats and Republicans today, and she argued that she was being unfairly singled out, that she did not need to appear for this deposition in the first place. Her and her team have been pushing back and forth along with her husband for months, trying to prevent this deposition from happening. And she argued that if she were to do this, it should have been in public, but she certainly said she doesn't want to go through this process again.
Is the White House feeling the heat at all when it comes to the fallout over the release of the Epstein files? And do they have any sense of vision beyond tomorrow, in the sense that, okay, Republicans are going to subpoena Bill Clinton and force him to testify about Epstein, and that might mean that when Democrats reclaim the House, they're going to do that to current President Trump?
Yeah, I mean, Robert Garcia, the top Democrat on House Oversight, has said that already applies, because by bringing in a former president, he is arguing that they should also be willing to bring in the current president to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, given obviously there are pictures of them together, the birthday book, there are ties between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, despite the denials of wrongdoing by this White House. So Democrats say, Jake, that precedent has already been broken and that it's already there. And you've kind of heard that echoed in President Trump himself when he was asked about weeks ago about this fight over getting the Clintons to come and testify. The president said that maybe he shouldn't feel that way, but that he felt badly for former President Bill Clinton for having to go in there and sit down and conduct this deposition. And so he's already kind of expressed that sympathy, even as he's also, at times said it was only Democrats who were involved with Jeffrey Epstein, and that's who the focus should be on here. We've heard from people like Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie who say it's actually equal opportunity, and that regardless of if you're a Republican or a Democrat, if you had ties to Jeffrey Epstein that they have questions about, that they should be brought in for questioning. And so obviously with Hillary Clinton going in, Jake, someone who had never met Jeffrey Epstein but had met Ghislaine Maxwell, we have heard from sources say that they believe that sets the precedent for other family members to be brought in, whether that's in similar settings because of Jeffrey Epstein or other investigations. And so this could be precedent setting going forward, Jake, come the midterms and the White House's concerns over that. So we'll see what exactly that looks like going forward and what the questions are that they have for the former president when he goes in for his deposition tomorrow.
So this photo we found, it was on the Justice Department's website on January 31st, 26. It was accessible there. Then it's taken down. We initially saw this yesterday on the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, and this link is not online. It's noticed. People online start saying, that looks a lot like Howard Lutnick. Members of Congress start saying Howard Lutnick needs to answer questions about this. The link is then restored only after people bring this up, okay? Only after people bring this up. After I've reached out to the Justice Department, to the Commerce Department, to the White House, this link is then restored late.
So it's almost as if someone thought they could just remove it before anyone noticed it. I'm not saying they did.
We don't know, but it's
it
definitely
could
possible.
be interpreted that way. Okay.
And then it's put back online. I think the statement that they gave to us said that it was part of a batch of images that were pulled for review and that are being uploaded with necessary redactions on a rolling basis. No files are being deleted. They said it was part of a batch of files that were flagged for nudity. I mean, obviously, there's no nudity in that photo. That is what they've said. That is what they told us. Lutnick has not addressed this, but obviously, this, we have the fact that he said he went to the island. We know because there's an email where he talks about going to the island. Now we have this purported photo of him on the island. It does not, what he said before, the photo, what he told the committee, those two things obviously can't be, the same.
Former President Clinton's testimony, more than 5 hours of it before the House Oversight Committee. The first time ever a former president has been compelled to testify under oath to Congress. Unlike his wife, the former Secretary of State, he did not talk afterwards about today's questioning, which, the same as yesterday, took place near the Clinton home outside New York. Also, by contrast with her, he actually knew Epstein in the early 2000s. According to flight logs, he traveled more than 24 times on Epstein's private jet, and photos of him are in the Epstein files, including this one of him swimming with Ghislaine Maxwell and an unidentified woman. We know the committee asked him about this one specifically, whether he knew the woman there next to him in the hot tub and whether he had sex with her. Mr. Clinton answered no to both questions. And we know from the opening statement he published this morning, he said more. Quoting from it now, "I know what I saw and more importantly, what I didn't see. I know what I did and more importantly, what I didn't do. I saw nothing and I did nothing wrong." He continues, "But even with 2020 hindsight, I saw nothing that ever gave me pause. We were only here because he hid it from everyone so well for so long. And by the time it came to light with his 2008 guilty plea, I had long associating with him." Afterwards, Committee Chairman James Comer praised the former president for answering or attempting to answer every question put to him. And though he said that when Americans get a chance to see the video, they will, quote, have more questions about some of the answers given, he also referred to the history made today.
I believe that in the history of Congress, the two highest ranked officials to ever be deposed by Congress would be President Bill Clinton and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. We still have lots of questions about how Epstein accumulated so much wealth, and we will continue to bring some more people in and try to get answers.
Chairman Comer was also asked about this claim President Trump has been repeating almost every chance he gets, including today.
I don't know anything about the Epstein files. I've been fully exonerated.
The president this afternoon, and here's Chairman Comer tonight with the help of a fellow Republican on the committee.
Do you agree that he is exonerated of this matter?
From all the evidence I've seen, he's been exonerated for a long time.
And would that preclude your committee, if that's your position, from your committee calling him?
Well, we'll discuss that as we move forward. Obviously, we've got more people to bring in, and we'll see if any new evidence arises. But right now, I haven't seen anything. And if anybody
Can I just say this? Yeah. The Epstein victims have exonerated President Trump. This is a trope that you guys are, a rabbit hole you guys are going down, but he has been exonerated over and over again by Epstein victims.
When later pressed on how that could be, Chairman Comer referred to a meeting the committee had with what he said were 5 or 6 survivors. He said they all said they never saw or heard anything that Donald Trump did wrong. We should add that 5 or 6 women are far from the hundreds who Epstein victimized. We should also say that both the president and former President Clinton deny any and all wrongdoing in all of this. Which raises the following question for the committee's ranking Democrat. If it's okay to depose Bill Clinton and question him about his encounters with Jeffrey Epstein, why not also question the current president?
Republicans have now set a new precedent, which is to bring in presidents and former presidents to testify. So we're once again going to make that call that we did yesterday. We are now asking and demanding that President Trump officially come in and testify in front of the Oversight Committee. He appears in the Epstein files next to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, almost more than anybody else.
Joining me now is Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna. He's been in the forefront of demanding accountability on all of this. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee and took part in both former President Clinton and former Secretary Hillary Clinton's depositions. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Long day. What can you say about what you talked about or what you heard today?
Well, first of all, it's important that President Clinton showed up, that he answered every question. He didn't plead the Fifth Amendment. It was a civil exchange. And he said he's doing it because he believes in participating in democracy as a citizen. That should be a precedent for Donald Trump to do the same, for Howard Lutnick to do the same, and frankly, for other men who are in these files with allegations of having gone to the island to do the same.
The Republicans on the committee are saying Donald Trump has been exonerated. Do you believe that is true?
What does that mean? I mean, there's certainly just yesterday news that there are 3 FBI interviews that the Justice Department has withheld from a woman who made allegations that she was sexually assaulted as a minor by President Trump. Now, I want to be very clear. Those are allegations. I haven't seen the files, but what is troubling is the cover-up. And my view is that the biggest problem with President Trump is that he has not followed the law. The Epstein Transparency Act requires all of these statements to be released. At least half of the statements have not been released. That's what I would want to ask him. Why aren't you releasing all the statements?
When you say half the statements, you're talking about millions of documents.
Millions of documents. And CNN did an analysis saying that there are at least 90 survivor statements, not just concerning President Trump, but concerning other men who may have abused or raped these young girls. Their statements to the FBI, not in the files. Our law, Thomas Massie and my law, requires that release. And that is the biggest issue. But, you know, as a matter of common sense, most Americans will say if President Clinton can answer these questions, so should Donald Trump. The person who shouldn't have been there is Hillary Clinton. I mean, I don't understand why she was called to testify.
She testified she never even met him.
She never met him. She had nothing to do with him. There are thousands of people who we could call other than Hillary Clinton. To President Clinton's credit, he said, I should be called to testify. I had been on his private planes. And when people see the transcripts with their own eyes, we're not supposed to talk about it. I know the Republicans play fast and loose with the rules. But I want them to pay attention to Representative Melanie Stansbury in New Mexico and the pointed questions she asked President Clinton. She's a Democrat. And she spoke up for the survivors and their statements and asked some very challenging questions of President Clinton. Suhas Subramanian, another Democrat, asked very pointed questions of President Clinton. So the Democrat side did not pull punches. In fact, some of the Republicans thought we asked tougher questions. Why? Because our North Star has always been justice for the survivors.
So do you think there's no, Comer's head of this committee, it is unlikely that the President of the United States is going to come in and they're saying he's exonerated, that he's going to be asked to come in to answer questions.
I think it's unlikely that he will. Nancy Mace has said that she's open to a subpoena for Howard Lutnick. That would be a start. So I do think we can get some administration officials. And then, of course, the midterm elections, one of the questions is going to be, do you believe there should be accountability for Donald Trump and further investigations that are nonpartisan? I do think if we had Chairman Garcia, he would issue that subpoena.
Is Nancy Mace wanting to hear from Howard Lutnick enough if James Comer, is Comer behind that?
I don't know where Comer is, but
would it depend on him?
I don't think so, actually, because if we get every Democrat, which we would, and Nancy Mace can get a few Republicans, we would have the votes to do the subpoena. And Nancy Mace, of course, as you remember, was one of the people who signed the discharge petition with Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene to force the release of the files in the first place. So I believe we will have the coalition to have Howard Lutnick come. I mean, today, Donald Trump says he's very innocent. He's very innocent. No one has accused Howard Lutnick of impropriety sexually with young girls. What we have said is, why did you lie about your relationship with Epstein and did you have alleged business ties and come clean?
He said initially, I think, that he had been to his house once with his wife. It turned out he had actually been to the island.
He had been to the island. He had been there and engaged allegedly in conduct with Epstein long after Donald Trump said that I alerted the police saying that I'm really concerned about what Epstein's doing. And so it goes to his judgment. He's the representative of America around the world. You have the former prince in Britain Britain being prosecuted, Lord Mendelsohn being prosecuted, the former Norwegian prime minister being prosecuted, and here in the United States, there's no accountability. And that's, I think, what's upsetting people like Nancy Mace.
How significant is it, do you think, that President Clinton testified, according to the Republicans, that in early 2000s, then citizen Donald Trump told him that he had a falling out with Epstein over a land deal and they were no longer friends?
Well, again, they're not supposed to characterize it, but because they have, what I would say is the people should look at the transcript. What President Clinton said was that, Comer is correct, that it's up to the committee to make a determination whether to call Donald Trump. And he was basically saying his knowledge, he may not have personal knowledge about what Donald Trump did or did not do. That doesn't mean that Donald Trump is somehow exonerated. President Clinton was testifying from what his personal knowledge of the matter is. And when the transcript comes out, it will be perfectly clear.
Yesterday, Secretary Clinton was saying that some of the questions she started to get toward the end were, about UFOs and Pizzagate. Did that happen again today?
Not when I was there. They stayed largely on topic. I will give the Republicans credit that for the portions I was there, it was more civil than I expected. In fact, I've got to be candid. I think that there was some sexism in the way Secretary Clinton was treated. She was treated worse than President Clinton was treated.
President Clinton was treated better, or with what in terms of the tone?
In terms of the tone, in terms of the respect, and I don't understand why Secretary Clinton was called. I really don't. I understand why President Clinton was called. He should have been called. That was appropriate. But Secretary Clinton never met this person, and the questions that she was subject to, in my view, the tone was much worse than President Clinton, and I thought it inappropriate.
Do you think the Pizzagate questions were one of the reasons Secretary Clinton was called in? Because it's been a while since I went down that QAnon rabbit hole. But if my memory serves, it had something to do with the pizza parlor and Secretary Clinton.
It's so outrageous that I can't even remember the conspiracy.
Yes.
But it's sort of about Hillary Clinton being.
Do you think that's part of the reason she was called in?
I think that they're trying to conflate it and say that she was part of some conspiracy theory. And the fact is that she never met or knew Epstein. I mean, there was one time in some historical society of the White House that he showed up as a donor. That means she may have shaken his hand. But there's no reason that she should have been called. And I'm saying this objectively. President Clinton should have been called, and he should have been subject to tough questioning. But I think she was mistreated. And I hope when people see the transcript and the video, that'll become clear.
Congressman Khanna, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.